Okay, so Vicksburg is important. Okay, transportation center, railroad center, uh, controls. The Union can't control Mississippi without getting Vicksburg. It Someone called it kind of the nailhead of the Confederacy. That once you captured Vicksburg, the Confederacy is split in two. It's a big deal. Everybody recognizes it. But it's also very tough. It's very tough. So here's what Grant does. And his first attempt is a failure. He divides up his army. He sends about half his army, which is about 35,000 men, um, with under the command of William Sherman, to straight down the Mississippi River to attack Vicksburg from the north. This is late 1862, and it's going to culminate in late 1862, early 1863. Okay, so we're this is the period that we're in, and so Sherman goes down, and he's supposed to attack Vicksburg from the north. And what Grant is going to do is he is going to take another 32,000 men, the other half of the army, and he's going to march down the dry land, right down the gut of the state of Mississippi. And the idea is that Sherman will attack Vicksburg from the north, and then Grant will hook up, although my son tells me I'm not supposed to say hook up to college students. Anyway, Grant will combine his forces with Sherman, and Vicksburg will be captured. It doesn't work at all. Sherman manages to get his troops north of Vicksburg via naval vessels. They come down on naval transports. They don't march, and it's like a jungle north of Vicksburg. And in this attack on Vicksburg, which happens at the very end of 1862, Sherman is completely repulsed. The Confederates inflict huge amounts of casualties on Sherman's half of Grant's army without Sherman coming anywhere close to capturing Vicksburg. Now, Grant, for his own part, he's marching down the middle of Mississippi, the dry land, and he runs into trouble too, because the further he goes from Memphis into the state of Mississippi, the the thinner his supply line is, right? Because a army marches on its stomach, or this is the theory anyway. So as Grant goes deeper and deeper into Mississippi, the state of Mississippi, and the plan is that he's going to combine his forces with Sherman's north of Vicksburg and then capture the position. As Grant goes down the center of Mississippi, the Confederate cavalry chop up his supply lines, and Grant has to retreat back to Memphis, which is very unusual for him. It's probably the one time in the Civil War where he actually ordered a major retreat, but he didn't have any choice. The Confederate cavalry's chopped up his supply lines, his transportation, or rather his communication lines are also the telegraph wire. Cavalry go after them as well. And so this first attempt to capture Vicksburg is a disaster. It doesn't work at all. But Grant learned something in this first attempt. As he surveyed the farmland of Mississippi, as he marched through the center of Mississippi, he said later that he was amazed at the quantity of supplies that existed in Mississippi, because farmers were still growing crops. There were cattle there were horses there were hogs there, that there were plenty of supplies for the Union Army, at least for a short period of time, if the Union Army wanted to live off the land. And Grant had never really considered this, because if you did it by the book, you never cut yourself off from your supply line. But Grant was starting to see that it was possible, at least for a short period of time, to cut yourself off from your supply line, because there were such a high quantity of goods in the state of Mississippi, which shows Grant's ability to learn. So even in the face of this setback, Grant learned something, that he doesn't need a supply line. Okay, so Grant and Sherman actually keeps the position of the Union Army north of Vicksburg, but again, it's not really worth much to them because Vicksburg is impossible to capture from the north. Whereas Grant retreats all the way back to Memphis. Then Grant comes up with another plan. The Mississippi River. Sorry, it's my printer is going crazy on me now for some reason. Grant tries Vicksburg's on a bend in the Mississippi River, and I'll show you a map next week. And what Grant tried to do is he tried to build a canal. He tried to actually reformat the Mississippi River. He tried to change the flow of the Mississippi River where it did not run past Vicksburg. Again, this was did not work at all, but it did keep Union soldiers busy. And by the way, at this point, Grant is also using a number of ex-slaves as workers, whether willingly or not, to work on this canal as well. So Grant's second attempt to change the flow of the Mississippi River where it doesn't run by Vicksburg, thus leaving Vicksburg high and dry, and then maybe he could attack it from the west. This doesn't work either, although it does keep his soldiers busy. So, two failures on Grant's part. At this point, the Northern press is starting to get impatient with Grant. They're starting to question whether or not the rumors of Grant's alcoholism are true. It looks like Grant is completely floundering. This attempt to attack Vicksburg from the north in December and early January of 62-63 had not worked at all. Grant was forced to retreat. Sherman had taken large casualties, and Grant was no nearer to capturing Vicksburg. The canal idea was kind of scoffed at, although Lincoln really thought it was fantastic. Lincoln was really excited by the idea of changing the flow of the Mississippi River, and he got kind of excited about it. But Sherman said to somebody, the canal's not going to work. But Lincoln kept a close eye on it. He thought it had possibilities. But the Mississippi River basically doesn't want its flow changed, right? Even though the Army Corps of Engineers kind of controls it now, they didn't have the capacity in the 1860s to change the flow of the Mississippi River. So his soldiers, they're starting to be diseased because, they're in this, as spring comes of 1863, becomes warmer, there's mosquitoes. It's just not a very healthy environment. And so the Northern public and Northern newspapers, they turn on Grant. Grant, which had been the great hero after Donelson and Henry, he had his reputation tarnished somewhat at Shiloh because he'd been surprised at Shiloh, although he did manage to retake all the ground that he lost. And remember, this is April of 1862 at Shiloh, and so we're about, 8 months later as Grant starts to focus on Vicksburg. And so Lincoln at this point says to his secretary, I think Grant has hardly a friend left, except myself. But what I want is generals who will fight battles and win victories. Grant has done this, and I propose to stand by him. So Lincoln, to his credit, he knows that there is especially in the press, there's this drumbeat of criticism against Grant because of his inability to capture Vicksburg. The old stories of the alcoholism, that Grant was an alcoholic, that he was a drunk, they start floating as well. One congressman said, Grant is frittering away time and strength to no purpose. The truth must be told even if it hurts. You cannot make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, referring to Grant's troubles in the 1850s when he had really struggled. So things are looking pretty bad, pretty grim for Grant. By February, March of 1863, the press is turning on him. There's mutterings in Congress. There's rumors of his alcoholism. But luckily for Grant, he does have one ally remaining, very importantly, Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln appreciates what Grant has done for the Union cause, and he's not going to give up on Grant just yet.